I'm going to start off by asking you a question that I think sensibly you're going to have a hard time answering. In 25 words or less, describe what this film is about.
It's the story of a killing in Canberra in 1997. A girlfriend kills her boyfriend, and in the months preceding tells a lot of friends and colleagues she's going to do it, and no one stops her.
But what is it actually about? Because this is a bizarre film, mate. You've made a bizarre drama.
Life is bizarre.
Yes, but this is a bizarre psychological drama. In terms of what you think the film is actually about, how would you answer? How would you dare answer?
I'll dare to take up more than 25 words.
You now have a license to go above that limit, mate.
Because, look, I think the reason people come back to the real-life events as well, the tragedy of the killing of Joe, and then, we've adapted Helen Garner's book, which looks at that event, how it happened, and attempts to ask why. It ends up evoking many things for us. Firstly, it's about the unravelling of a relationship that between Joe Cinque and Anu Singh that led up to his killing by Anu on the 26th of October 1997. Involved in that were those friends who, many of them were law students, philosophy students, economics students, people that were at the ANU at the same time, who were invited to these two dinner parties that occurred in the week prior to Joe being killed. And they were ostensibly meant to be, farewell dinner parties. Anu and her friend Madhavi Rao had told people that she was going to kill herself, and other people that Joe also was going to commit suicide because Anu was sick and he didn't want to live without her. That evolved into a different narrative, which was, I'm taking Joe with me. He's the reason for my illness. And it progressed from there, leading up to his killing. At that level, once more people are involved, it starts asking questions about the responsibilities we might have as, one person to another in society if we want what we call a community, if we want solidarity, connections between people. And in studying that, and I think the book was amazing at looking at this, you're looking at human frailty and also the fragility of those bonds because of our own frailty. And what does that mean? What are the consequences of that? And Joe's death is a tragedy in and of itself. It's inherently dark. But for those of us who are not directly affected by it, if you have the luxury of not being a Cinque family member or a friend of Joe's, and I think all those people were devastated in some way, and Joe's parents continue to be affected, obviously. For the rest of us, we can also ask, what does this say about us? If you go another level, then I think, for those of us particularly interested in what maybe it says about us as spectators. I mean, in that moment when we observe the film in the cinema, and how is that relevant to real life? And I think, and this comes back to why Matt Rubenstein, my co-writer, and I wanted to make it a film. It was such an amazing book, so why make it a film? And that is that I think, that line between spectatorship and being a witness isn't just a line that separates the cinema from real life. It also is a measure of where we're at as individuals if we look at real life as if we're pure spectators rather than witnesses to a real event that might require us to act or intervene, do something to assist someone.
Right. And how would you describe that circle of friends? Because, as you say, you're watching the film, and in essence, you're watching people watching something.
Yeah, watching each other.
Yeah. How would you describe that circle of...
Well, firstly, they were, middle class to upper middle class, students. It takes place in the 90s. which, when you look at it now, it's kind of today's fashion, but 2 sizes bigger and with less care taken, I think, with one's hair. So it's familiar ground in many ways. But you also, I think, see the roots of things that are far more prevalent today, even celebrated. So the narcissism of Anu, that play, was one of the reasons, if you were at university with her, you really noticed her. She was extroverted and big and controlling, and people got, word got around, and, you moved on. You certainly didn't expect a killing to occur in that milieu. And given people's interest in the world more broadly, current affairs, issues, it was a time when, as a law student, you could still study theory and feminist legal theory and the history of law. And these were really fantastic things to enjoy at university before you're thinking of work or anything. How people who had an awareness of the world were then challenged by a pretty basic thing at a certain point for some of them, which was, this guy is in peril. What am I going to do about it? And people, when they look at this, and your first instinct is absolutely to defend and to relate, because I think we're all susceptible to these things. But they could have even acted as a collective. And so that failure, how it happened and why, is one of the reasons I think people are drawn to the book, and we were certainly drawn to adapting it.
And in the adaptation, though, you left a lot out, didn't you?
I think you have to when you adapt a book.
But in terms of like the trial,
sure.
the aftermath and so on, why did you decide to focus on that part of the story and not deliver some,
Sure.
I guess, dramatically speaking, perhaps some payoff or some third or fourth act material with the trial?
Yeah. I guess adaptation also involves interpretation, and it begins with how you interpret that idea. And for us, we, in a sense, adapted the courtroom through which Helen accesses that narrative. As, or the parallel for us was the cinema, and the way in which the active part of being an audience member is that we piece together a narrative, even at that most fundamental level, that there are ellipses, we're presented fragments, we create meaning from that. But then, a step removed from that, you also join the dots. And of course you're going to do that in a true crime drama. So she was certainly doing that in court, and part of the book is her internal narrative. Now, we could only ever do a shadow of that part of the narrative in a film, like a voiceover or something, or even this rather inactive or passive character, listening. It was far more interesting for us to make the audience that person.
The performances in this film are, I got to say, pretty extraordinary.
Thank you.
What were you going for, and was there a sense with any of them that they had to, like, enter a zone? What was the process by which you got these performances?
I think you look for people that enter that zone without realizing it. I don't think any of the actors would talk in those terms about themselves, and it's one of the reasons they're all in their own way amazing to work with, because it was very real, and they allowed the play to work on them, so to speak, which over 7 weeks of shooting, presents itself with challenges. But they were very dedicated and professional and courageous, and I'm sure took holidays after the shoot to recover, because it was pretty intense. But they're made for the job that they're doing, so I was very happy to work with them.
And Maggie Naouri, that is
She's
incredible.
extraordinary.
She is extraordinary.
Yeah.
Did you have to elicit that performance from her, or was there a sense again that you had kind of drawn a line and she stepped over a line and was kind of again in the zone of this character?
Yeah. Look, I think it's about preparation, And then when you're directing, particularly a feature, what you want to do is guide actors into distinctive actions as much as possible, so that, you know, a scene exists for a reason, and without using that language so that people are too self-conscious. You know, one scene is delineated from another, and that takes openness from the actor and trust. And she brought that to the table, and from there it's about stimuli, so allowing the other actors to affect them, and you guide. You know, the good thing about a film shoot is it's so busy, you don't have a lot, you just can't sit there and talk too much. So if you're smart, you take advantage of that to be very economical in what you say, but it does mean you prepare. And the actors were all available and did their prep, and were very specific in their choices. But once people are open and you cast well, I think then you've got something.